comes from? Vayikra, chapter 19. Parashat Kedoshim. Good morning, Israel. And it says, as a result, you might have heard that Hebrew phrase. Rabbi Kiva says, Zekla Gadol b'Torah. This is a great principle of the Torah. You should love your neighbor as yourself. The continuation of the pasuk says, "Hocheach tocheach et amitecha." You shall surely rebuke your friend.
What does it mean?
Rebuke means to tell them if they're doing something wrong.
Okay.
So, if you really love somebody, you want to correct them. It's a sign of love. You want them to do the right thing. The Talmud discusses this verse at length and reaches a conclusion which is quite shocking. It says, one of the rabbis said, I would be surprised if there's even one person alive today, the sages 2,000 years ago, if there's even one person alive today who knows how to, who is willing to receive rebuke, to be corrected. People, if you try to tell them what to do, they get their backs up and they'll feel offended and they'll be upset. Good morning. And another rabbi says, I'll be surprised if there's one person alive today who knows how to give rebuke properly. It's such a difficult mitzvah that the sages were aware that maybe 9 times out of 10, you try to do the mitzvah and you end up doing worse than what you tried to do. You wanted to help the situation, you wanted to help your friend, but in the end, either when you gave him rebuke, you felt, oh, I am better than he is, and I am, maybe you embarrassed him, maybe you didn't say it in the right way, maybe you weren't precise in telling him what to do, and it caused even further problems. And the opposite, the person hearing it, instead of being motivated, oh, I want to improve my ways, I want to fix myself, he says, to hell with this. I hate this guy. And instead of causing love, you caused hatred. So it's such a very, and it could be even more true today, I think, than it was 2,000 years ago. It's just human nature. It's very difficult, mitzvah. Of course, it is a mitzvah, and so, if possible, we should find a way to apply, but you have to be very, very careful.
So a better can do nothing.
If you're going to do harm, right, the first rule is do no harm, right? So, in many circumstances, the best approach is take the mirror approach. If you see somebody else doing something wrong, why are you seeing that? Maybe there's something that you have to fix about yourself. And definitely, you don't see everything in the world. For some reason, you noticed that. Maybe because it's a sensitive area for you. If you see somebody else is being angry, yelling at his wife, you're shocked. You want to tell him, don't act like that to your wife. Maybe you need to fix something about yourself. Listen, there are rare cases. For example, I am in a position where I get paid to tell people what to do. Correct? This is
another story.
But it's another story, and it's also very difficult. You have to be.
But just imagine, you see someone in shoe and the head tefillin, it's not in the middle, but let's say it's here.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. So first of all, you have to understand the laws of tefillin, and to know which is, how is that absolutely not kosher? Was it always on the side? Maybe before that it was in the middle, and he's still fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin. But you're all right that there are circumstances where you know the person. You know he's very humble. And he wants to do the right thing. And he's trying to do the mitzvah. You'd be happy for a helping hand. Tap him on the shoulder and say, listen, I think you're doing this wrong. You could do this better if you do it this way. He'd be so happy. He'd be thrilled. There are circumstances like that. I'm not saying never. But just raising the issue that many times...
I'm not intended to correct people, to tell them that they are wrong what they did. I'm intended to help. It's like when you see someone...
Intentions are clear.
Like to protest,
yes.
you're going to help them. You might hear, don't help me, I can do it by my own. Mm-hmm. So it's also defending. So it's not easy. It's
not easy.
My heart said, I need to help the people.
That's right. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The intention as well, meaning, and sometimes it can work out. So, but you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk, and many times it's how you do it. Absolutely.
Well, I try to help some ladies in the bus.
Yeah.
Like to take something on or take
something
down.
Yeah, and?
Never work.
Specifically, it's more dangerous because the woman might think you're trying to pick them up. Trying to start up with them. You never know. So
it was like a baby.
Right. No. There's so many factors. Culture, men and women. There's so many different factors.
I understand that. And after I started to ask first.
Good idea. It's always a good idea. Yes. If you ask. Sometimes that helps. Not always. It really depends. It becomes. There was a rabbi you mentioned Tefillin, rabbi where I lived, who was a very outgoing rabbi. He was very loving. He was so loving. He passed away. That's why I say in the past tense. His love. He was a student of Rav Kook, and Rav Kook was well known for his love of the Jewish people. Loved everybody. As a matter of fact, Rav Kook speaks about that our love should spread out from us like ripples. You throw a rock into the river, into the lake, and it spreads. So he says love should, of course, start with your family and move on to your neighbors and to the community and to all the Jewish people, and even to the non-Jewish people. The entire world, we should love everybody. Even the trees and the mountains and I love everything and everybody. Rav Kook has a beautiful passage like that. This rabbi was a student of it. Everybody knew that he loved. He made a point of meeting Arabs as well as Jews to spread the love. He had this theory that he could bring peace. Everybody knew his heart was so loving. And so he also was a curious man and very particular about mitzvah of tefillin. And he would walk around the Beit Knesset. If he saw anybody with his tefillin to the side, he would say, let me fix your tefillin and put it straight in the middle. It could be a little annoying, but everybody knew this fellow is so loving. All he wants to do is love. He means well. He's so well-intentioned that they forgave him. I hope, maybe people didn't forgive him. But in the context, maybe he could get away with it more so than if you just, you're sitting in somebody, next to somebody in shul, you never speak to him. Never, ever say hello. You never say, you look nice today. You never say, have a good day. Never. The only thing you have to say to him is, no. Your tefillin are in the wrong place. What is he going to think? What is he going to understand? So you have to, you put it in the context of social relationships. Also, in Beit Knesset, a person comes to Beit Knesset. Maybe he comes because he's fighting, he's struggling with his relationship with God. Maybe he's one step out the door. Maybe he feels angry at God.
We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know where he's coming from. Maybe he had a fight with his wife that day, and maybe she was telling him what to do, what he's doing wrong. And now you come and you say to him, all I wanted to do was move his tefillin, but it added on top of 100 things that were happening to him earlier in the day. We don't know what people went through. I see it so often. Sometimes you go into a bus, and Nana was mentioning, or a subway, and people look sad, or they look troubled. You don't know. And then you notice, you keep staying on the bus a little while, they get off. They stop next to the hospital. Or maybe their father's in the hospital, maybe their wife's in the hospital. You never know. We don't know what people are going through. It's very, very difficult to tell somebody what to do. And on the other hand, we want to help. I don't want to stop you from helping somebody.
But I think there might be one exception. I saw that before. Early in the morning, I'm not talking about 8 o'clock, I'm talking about maybe 4:30, very early in the morning.
Okay.
Somebody coming inside of the shul, and I see he don't have a kippah. He just forget it.
Right.
Maybe he's still sleeping, he just forget it.
That's right. That's right.
But I think this could be an exception to tell him, you forget your kippah, and everywhere in shul they have a second for you, and it's no problem at all.
That's right. That's right.
So
Sure.
but I think we need to tell them.
Yeah, you may be right. I think I've done that before. A friend of mine who he came to Mincha. I see he's not wearing a kippah. Obviously, he forgot it. He thought it blew off, whatever. He didn't notice. So I didn't just go to him and tell him. Because if it was me, I should think about it. Use the mirror. If it was me, how would I feel? If I'm in the middle of shul and someone comes up to me and says, hey, you're not wearing a kippah. I'm like, oi, I'm so sorry. Where's the kippah? How do I solve the problem? So I went to get a kippah, or I took off my hat. I had a hat and a kippah, and I gave him. And I just gave him that. And then he worked out. He realized, that and he gave me back my hat later.
Yes.
Find the solution, and don't just put somebody in a situation where he's no solution, not to be comfortable. But you're right. I'm giving you the sensitivities. But many situations, the context is clear that you're just trying to help him out, and he would be happy to hear some words of wisdom or some, correcting things. That's a lot what I say here. People, I assume you want to learn. So if I say this is correct, this is incorrect, you don't take offense. I hope that I tell you what I think. Of course, it's only what I think. There's many. Also, in the context of religion, though, I think people feel very holy. I know, and he doesn't know, and I'm going to teach him. And you feel like a tzaddik by telling everybody else what to do. It's a little dangerous, a little bit. It could feed into your own arrogance and your own feeling of putting yourself up by putting somebody else down. And so it's very complicated, very sticky. I'm making a very simple question into something very complicated. But life is complicated and relationships are difficult. I think, unfortunately, too many times people come into shul. We mentioned it the other day when we were talking about the Torah reading. And they feel it's their job to find what's wrong. Right? Oh, he made a mistake. They yell out, right? You're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. And then that's not the atmosphere we want to necessarily have in the shul. Everybody to feel comfortable. In principle, yes, you're absolutely right. It's a good thing to correct others.
But you need to be careful, very careful.
You have to be very careful, yeah.
Once
In practice, yeah.
he was in Shalit, and one guy was called up to the Torah, and he wasn't wearing the talit. And then I just like, and he put on
a talit, right. So here, that's another problem when it comes to religion. And I was saying everybody has their own issues, what they're coming from, where they, but in religion in particular, the more I study, the less I correct people. Why? Because we study, for example, Pnei Halacha. We're going to continue with some of the laws. There's so many customs. There's so many different opinions.
Yes.
Is it only my way or the highway? Maybe this other fellow comes from the Tripoli. Maybe he comes from Morocco. Maybe he comes from, Aleppo. He was from a German community. They do things a little differently. I learned this is what I have to do. This is what I think everybody has to do. But you learn that there's so many other opinions. And maybe there's also lechatchila and b'di'evet. There's the first ideal situation, then there's after the fact. It might still be kosher without, even if it's not the ideal situation. So if you see somebody that's going into, with a kippah and a tzitzit and peot, and he's going into a restaurant that serves horse meat, okay, it's not kosher. He'll probably be happy that, this is not a kosher restaurant. So then, it makes sense you should tell somebody. But what if you see him going into a restaurant that has one type of kashrut, but not another type of kashrut? So according to the way you studied and what your rabbis told you is that this is only reliable and the other kashrut is no good. But maybe his rabbis told him the opposite. Maybe he's following his rabbis that this is the type of kosher supervision that's needed. And this is, what do we have now? The Shemitah year. These people feel heter mechira. I don't even want to get near it. The other people say, this is the ideal way to keep Shemitah nowadays, is by the selling the land to the non-Jews. We have to be aware that there's so many opinions in Judaism, specifically regarding religious matters. I would think twice before I correct somebody, because I think I know what's correct. And especially, I will say one more word. We're sitting here, I consider myself also. We're all beginners. I learned, of course it's always good to teach somebody else. If you know a little bit and he knows less, you can teach him. But in terms of correcting, maybe there's you don't know all the laws yet. Maybe you don't know all the circumstances. Maybe you don't know all the rules and the conditions in which they apply and when they don't apply. Everybody would like to be the rabbi. Everybody would like to be the one who knows more.
Yeah.
But we have to have some humility, and I don't know everything.
I think there is a very big difference between what you ask and how you ask.
It's true. Sometimes.
Also is maybe also especially for a teacher like you. We study many things, and maybe one day you want to know if we still remember. The way you ask us could make
Right.
for ourselves inside a big problem. When you write me right away, now tell me about, and you.
Right.
I don't know, I forget.
Right. Good pressure, yeah.
I feel very bad. But if you ask me another way, who remember, and we can rise up our hand.
Right.
It's so different.
It's very, very difficult. I pray about this all the time, that I should find the right approach. And being a teacher, you're in touch with people every day. You could say things, wrong, and you could maybe embarrass someone or maybe push them and make them uncomfortable, and it's not good. But doing my best. Can
I ask you a second question?
Okay, sure.
I'm sorry, but
No, the questions are great. This class, that's what it's for. It's for asking from the simplest to the most complicated questions. Yeah. It's especially good, your questions, because it comes from living your Judaism. Right? If you're just studying a book And okay, it's an interesting thing, but you see how it's practiced. You study, and then you see in practice. There's always going to be questions. It's very good. That's the best way to learn. So go ahead. Yeah, Birkat Kohanim. Yeah.
So, how important is this moment to receive the blessing of the Kohanim?
It's a good question. It's a commandment in the Torah for the Kohanim to give the blessing. It's one of the 613 mitzvot.
Okay.
It's one of the 613. Only can be done by a Kohen. I'm not a Kohen. I don't think there's another Kohen. You're a Kohen? You're not a Kohen? I don't. So we can't do that mitzvah, but it is a beautiful mitzvah. It's a strange custom outside the land of Israel. Kohanim don't give the blessing every day. They give it only on special holidays, and it's a really curious custom. There's no clear, good reason. But that is the custom that developed outside the land of Israel. There are some Sephardic communities throughout the world that do recite the Birkat Kohanim every day, but most don't. Most don't. Most Jews outside of Israel, they miss out on this mitzvah. The Kohanim miss out on the mitzvah every day. There must be a good reason. Some people say that in order to give the blessing, a Kohen must be in joy. And how can they be joyful if they're in the galut, if they're in exile? But whatever the reason, here in Israel, it's clear. There are some communities in the Galil, believe it or not, they came from the galut, they kept their custom, even though it's pretty universal, except for those few communities. Everywhere in the land of Israel, the Kohanim, if they are Kohanim, and there's a minyan, they give the Kohanim blessing. It's a mitzvah from the Torah every day. So the way it works is that every time the Kohen gets called up, he has to be called up. If there's more than two, if there's more than one, if there's only one, he doesn't get called, but he does recite the blessing, and then the blessing on the mitzvah. Like before you do every mitzvah, put on the tzitzit, you make a blessing first. Put on the tefillin, you put on the blessing first. So the Kohen is about to do a mitzvah, so he makes a blessing. It's a very unique blessing. Asher kidshanu b'kedushato shel Aharon. He who sanctified us with the holiness of Aharon. V'tzivanu, and he commanded us, meaning the children of Aaron, the Kohanim, levarech et amo Yisrael be'ahava, to bless God's people with love. I say that if a Kohen doesn't have love in his heart, he can't make the blessing. It has to be with love.
We are in a bad day, bad mood.
That's right. Maybe he can't make the blessing. Or if there's somebody in the crowd who he hates, his enemy, he can't make the blessing. It's very, very difficult.
It's a bigger mitzvah.
If you can bring yourself to overcome your hatred, 100%, that's great. That's the best. Maybe that's what it's designed for. Anyways, then after making the blessing, we answer Amen, whoever's there, and he blesses us. You know, the 3 verses, 3 words, 5 words, and 7 words. Each one has the name of God in the middle. That's why the last verse says afterwards, some people recite it, I think we all recite it every morning. In the morning part of the morning blessings, we say the blessings over the Torah, and then we have to learn some Torah. So which parts of Torah do we choose to learn? Most communities, they choose to learn Torah. These psukim, verses of Birkat Kohanim. Anyways, the last verse there, after the actual blessing itself, says, and they shall place, it says, God tells the Kohanim to bless the people. Mm-hmm. And then he says, and they shall place my name on the people of Israel, and I will bless them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we notice in the actual 3 verses, each one has the name of God in it. Yes. It's almost like a process where they're placing the name of God onto you, onto the community that they are blessing. It's a beautiful thing, and then the blessing comes from God. Ultimately, they're channels. They're a conduit, an agent of God to bless the Jewish people. So it's such a beautiful mitzvah, and it's an opportunity, especially if you grew up not in the land of Israel, not having the Birkat Kohanim every day. Either way, the actual commandment is on the Kohen to bless. you know what they say? It takes two to tango. There's an expression: "There's no king without subjects." I'm the king. Nobody else is here. Be the king all you like, but without subjects, you're not much of a king. You need the Kohen can't fulfill his mitzvah unless he has who to bless. So there is a comment. There is an opinion that, in a little measure, everybody who receives the blessing participates in the mitzvah. Somewhat. Even though I'm not a Kohen, the mitzvah is on him. But I'm aiding him into fulfilling this beautiful commandment. So it's in some way I participate too. So that's why it is a good thing to be blessed. Also to receive the blessing of God. But also in terms of obligation, and in terms of mitzvah performance, it can be considered a little bit of a performance that you yourself should strive to do, to be blessed, not only because you want to get the blessing, but because you are facilitating one of the commandments, that you're facilitating that the Kohen should be able to do this commandment. And that in itself is a good deed, even if you were already blessed, let's say.
But it's so beautiful
Another
to
Kohen.
start the day after you receive the blessing.
But we say this blessing
Absolutely, yeah.
Shabbat, Shabbat, or blessing for children as well.
That's beautiful. The truth is, we believe that everybody has the power to bless. It says by Avraham Avinu that God gave Avraham the power to bless. Avarcha mevarchecha, right? All the nations, right? But every person that blesses somebody, it's powerful. It's not the Kohen's blessing. So there is this custom that the father blesses the children, particularly on Friday nights. In our home, my wife blesses the children as well. A mother's blessing is a beautiful thing. She does it usually after she lights the candles or whenever she sees them. Some fathers bless their children before the kiddush, after the kiddush, sometime around there. And it's a lovely custom. There's even a custom that the father takes the child under his talit in the Bet Knesset to receive the priestly blessing. It's a nice custom. It's but really the actual mitzvah in the Torah is for the Kohen to make the blessing. There's even a little bit of a problem. Some rabbis say, don't put both your hands, if you're a father and you're not a Kohen, don't use both your hands because it's too similar to a Kohen. You can't take away the mitzvah of the Kohen. You're not a Kohen.
One hand is okay.
But, so they say only do one hand, not two hands. But other rabbis say, everybody knows you're not a Kohen. You're blessing him as a father. You're not blessing him in front of the community. You're pretending to be a Kohen. You're being the father. You're giving a blessing as a father. That's fine. Good morning, Ariel. Welcome. Good to see you. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much, about one hand or two hands. Sometimes I do one, sometimes I do two, sometimes. They say you should put your right hand. 3 hands I've never done yet. The right hand is, as we always say, it's an expression of force and chesed and giving and something that you really want to do and strength. So that's preferred. If you want to give your blessing, give it with your whole heart and might. But sometimes it works out. There's something in my right hand, so I do it with my left hand. I'm not a big stickler for the tiny details of these customs, which we have to recognize that it's a beautiful custom, and I try to bless. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes my child comes over to me and says, Abba, I forgot to bless me. Can I have a blessing, please? No. Can you have a blessing? The most precious thing in the world is to give you a blessing. Wonderful. It's a great opportunity. But it's not an actual obligation in terms of the mitzvot that we have to do, not the Oraita, not the Rabbanan, and only some communities have that custom. In Europe, the custom was most common on only one night a year that the father blesses blesses his children. Which night? That was the custom in my home. My father gave me a blessing only once a year. He loved me. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur? Erev Yom Kippur. It was a big event. He was wearing his kittel, his white robe. And, of course, he was in a very serious mindset and gearing himself up for the holy day. So it was a very, very special moment. Remember it till today.
Beautiful.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that he shed a tear once or twice. But it's so common that people bless their children every Friday night. So I started to do that. Why not? And I added something though. I don't just say the Birkat Kohanim. It's quite common you say the 3 verses that we were talking about. And you add also the verse from Yaakov, who he said to Yosef and his sons. And he asked to bring his grandchildren to him. And he said, Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim uchim Nasher. And he said, actually, Yaakov gave this blessing to Yosef. He says, Becha yevarech Israel. The Jewish people will bless through you. And they will always say, let your children be like Ephraim and Menachem, of course, the 2 children of Yosef. And what's the idea? What's so special about Ephraim and Menachem? We talked about them on Antiyul. We were up north. We were in the land of Menachem. And Chatzi Shevet Menachem. We talked about it last week's parsha. But why it's so special, Ephraim and Menachem? I think the very concept of blessing, I must have mentioned it to you before, is that instead of one, you have 2. Blessing means increase. And instead of having 1 tribe, the tribe of Yosef, they got 2 tribes, Ephraim and Menachem. Right? So that's by the very naming of the Ephraim and Menachem as tribes of Israel, they personify what it means to have blessing, is to have an increase and bounty and plenty. So that's standard. You say the 3 verses of the Kohanim's blessing, and then Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim uchim Menachem. What about the girls? Ephraim, I don't want the girls to be like Ephraim and Menachem. That's a confused part of our culture nowadays. Yisimech Elohim keSarah Rivka Rachel veLeah. We bless them that they should be like the 4 mothers.
Right.
Not the 4 fathers. It's so confusing. The 4 mothers. There's actually four mothers. Yes. In any case, then I actually, because I'm making stuff up, and my father never did this, I decided I always add one more word, one more sentence, whenever I bless my children Friday nights. Now they don't live at home, so it's not sometimes I bless them on the phone. They could say Shabbat Shalom, I call them, and they say, are you ready? Somehow the blessing goes through the phone wires, or through the air, and it devolves upon their head. Sometimes I tell them, put the phone on your head. Put the phone on your head. Loudspeaker, yeah. I always add, I love you.
So beautiful.
I say, I love you to my children. Once a week at least. You should say 10 times a day, but once a week. So, and also, if you add it in as part of the ritual, then it helps you. Sometimes we have a hard time to express ourselves, to express our love. It's very personal, emotional. People like to keep their emotions to themselves, and many people have a hard time expressing themselves. But if it's part of the ritual to say, I love you, it helps. It helps. So this is a nice custom. As I said, my father, I know he loved me, but he didn't tell me he loved me very often. Even though the one time a year that he gave me the blessing, I could feel the love, but he didn't say the words, I love you. This was not his style. Everybody has a different style of parenting, of talking, of culture. There's cultural things. But anyways, this is what I have to say about the Birkat Kohanim. Does that, Ravi, do you wanted to follow up with another question? Or
Yeah.
1 second, Renan. Okay, you let him go first? Yeah, okay.
We should bless before the...
Kiddush?
Before before the Kiddush or after the Kiddush on Friday?
Exactly. Ravid.
What?
There's different customs.
No, but they're different. The Ashkenazi is Friday or...
No, I don't think
family?
it's. There are some people that get very into there's rule books about minhagim. You could have an entire book of the minhagim of Spinka, or the minhagim of Bells, or the minhagim in Komarna. All these different Hasidic rabbis, they were very, very particular about their customs. You have to have the hat with the brim up or the brim down. If you do it the other way, you're part of that group. And this is not following your pious holy man, his leader. We wear white socks, they wear black socks. I won't even talk about the Red Sox. Because I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm from Toronto. But I'm not making light of it. Whoever's in part of a group, he wants to continue it's a good thing. Yeah.
I didn't know.
You couldn't tell? It's a good thing to keep the customs of your family, of your community. It's fine. But for somebody who doesn't have that built in, I don't put a lot of effort in. I don't think there's a right way and a wrong way. Blessing before the Kiddush or after the Kiddush. There's no rule. There's no rule. You don't have to do it at all. But my wife decided on her own to do it after she lights candles. When the children were small, they're always there. So she went lighting the candles, and then she blessed the children. Now the kids are bigger, so she does it later, whenever they come home from shul, whatever works. But I try to stay away from specific obligations because we have so many as it is, and it's hard to distinguish. You can think in the end you'll end up correcting somebody and saying, "Oh, you're tefillin over here." You'll think it's just as important. You should be blessing them before the Kiddush. No, you should be blessing them after the Kiddush. So I'm careful not to say specific what you must do, because this is a beautiful custom, but the rules are not clearly defined, and they're not compulsory. Ravi, do you wanted to ask a question? We're waiting for a long time. I'll take other questions too.
Okay, and it's about how we need to behave at the moment when we receive the blessing of the Kohanim, because the Kohanim, they don't look to us. They cover their...
They're supposed to cover themselves.
How
Yeah.
do we need to behave at that moment? Can we look to the Kohanim? Do we not look to them? And the second question is, I am used when I see someone next to me standing without a talit, I go to this person, I take my talit, and also put it on his head. Because for me it's like to receive the blessing of the Kohanim. It's for me a very important moment, because it's the beginning of my day, and I love to receive the blessings from Hashem through the Kohanim.
Right.
For me, it's very important. So right. I want to share it with people who don't have the talit at that moment. So how?
It's a good question. I believe that the Talmud says that if the Kohanim are giving the blessing, they're standing at the front of the community. The Talmud has an expression. If you can imagine that there's an iron wall, like it's armored, and it's separating between you and the Kohanim. I don't know, you're in jail or something. You're in a vault. The blessing still comes through. So you get the blessing if you're in the community, if you're in the crowd. The Kohen hopefully is thinking he wants to bless everybody with love. Whether or not you have the talit on or you don't have the talit on, even if you're in a side room, you're still receiving the blessing of the Kohen. Whether you're closing your eyes, whether you're talking to your friend, the blessing is given and it's received. Now, of course, it's a good thing to be respectful. If someone's giving you a blessing and you're on your phone, you're not really paying attention to their blessing. You're not there. I don't care about the blessings. It's almost disrespectful. So it's a good thing that even if you're praying, it says in the poskim you should stop praying and be silent. Sometimes you can answer amen, sometimes you can't answer amen, depends what section of prayer you're in. Are you allowed to make this type of interruption of saying amen of this kind or not? There's different portions. I mentioned to you once there's a chart at the back of the Siddur, and there's a lot of laws about when you're allowed to interrupt your own prayer. But by interrupting, by just being silent and listening, is a sign of respect. And if the Kohanim are blessing you, everybody should stop what they're doing and just even if you're not going to answer amen, you should be receiving the blessing. Now, this custom of covering yourself with the talit, it's a nice one. As I mentioned before, it's a sign of intimacy between a father and a child. I've offered my talit I know there's an orphan in the community. His father is not in shul with him, but he said no. I accepted that. I didn't expect him really to say yes, but it's a nice gesture. Some people, if you put your talit on them, they'll like say, "Get out of here! What are you touching me? You're a stranger. I don't. Yeah, it depends. There's cultural differences. Some people are very touchy. In some cultures, they're like, keep your distance. You're not even supposed to look at someone, let alone talk to them, let alone to offer them, let alone to take them under your wing. It all depends on the circumstances and then, the expectations, but, they're still receiving the blessing even if they're not wearing any talit. So I don't think you have to force your way in that way. When I was a child, getting a religious education, there's a rabbi who told me the following rule. He said, you're not allowed to look at the Kohanim when they give the blessing. It's a law, it's true. 100%. And he said to us, to the group of the children, he said, the first time you look at the Kohen, you go blind in one eye. This is the punishment from heaven. We were shaking. And he said, the second time you look at the Kohanim, you go blind in the other eye. And the third time you look at the Kohanim, you die. He expected us all to laugh. You get it? Hopefully you got it. How can you look the third time? If you're blind in both eyes. Oh, I got him. You didn't get it. Okay, so he was a wise man. He was a good teacher, right? You can make up all sorts of threats that you're not allowed to look at the Kohen. It's disrespectful, and there's all sorts of superstitions that can be damaging to you. But I don't think you're going to die if you look at the Kohanim. But you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to look at the Kohanim. Even if you look at them, they're all covered with the talit. We have so much protection from both ways. We don't look. Some people put their talit, or if you have a talit, you cover yourself with the talit. It just helps you not look. That's all.
It just helps you concentrate also.
Helps you concentrate 100%. Yeah, but if it's a hot day and I don't feel like putting my talit over my head, I just close my eyes or I look down.
You can go like this also.
You could do that. There's all sorts of things you could do. You could, I don't know, take a baseball hat and cover your face with it. You can do anything you want. But again, I try to make a distinction between what's obligatory and what's customs that may vary in different communities, and so there is a law. You shouldn't be looking at the Kohanim. I think it's a question of respect, but it's not the end of the world. If you do, as I said, usually you can't see what's going on anyways. The Kohanim, many of the Kohanim, not only do they cover their faces, but they cover their hands. Right? There's also this. What the Kohanim do is Spock move. Right? Spock. Mm-hmm. Spock, do you know Spock? Star Trek?
Yes, Spock.
Star Trek? Leonard Nimoy. He was a Jewish man. The actor. Leonard Nimoy. And he did this, right, as a Vulcan salute. He made it up. He knew it from shul. Growing up, a little child, he was a Kohen. He was taught to do this, and then he used it as an actor. He made up, this is the Vulcan Greeting, and everybody knows it now. But it's a Jewish custom to do that. Why? It's actually very interesting. If you do like this, then you have five You have 5. You see 5?
I cannot do it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead of 10 fingers, you got 5 fingers. And why that's meaningful, I'm not sure. But 5 is in Kabbalah. There's 5 worlds. In it's an expression of unity. Instead of 2 hands, you have 1 hand. It's like 10 becomes 5. You sort of unity. This is a very ancient custom. That this is what the Kohanim do. And if you think about it in a very graphic way, the blessing comes from Shamayim, through the Kohanim, and then out through their hands, right? They're sort of like giving the blessing. It's like a transmission of the waves of spiritual blessing are coming through the fingers. So you shouldn't look at it, because if you look at somebody welding, there's a special goggles you have to wear because it hurts your eyes. It's so bright. So maybe this is where it comes from, this idea that you're not supposed to look at the Kohanim's fingers. You're not supposed to look at the Kohanim's faces, at them when they're blessing. So some Kohanim, they cover not only their face, they cover their hands too. So even if you do look up, you won't see anything. You'll see the Kohanim with a talit over him, which is, I think, not prohibited.
My great father.
Yes.
He was a Kohen and.
On your mother's side.
Yes.
Otherwise, if it's on your father's side, you'd be a Kohen.
Right, yes. And his tombstone, you see the 2 hands.
The 2 hands,
They're
right.
beautiful.
So there is a tradition that says, I'm doing it now because I'm teaching you, right? That you're not supposed to do the Vulcan greeting. Leonard Nimoy was not an Orthodox Jew. Later in life, he was very proud of his Jewish heritage. He was connected, and he taught. He attracted people to Chabad, all sorts of events and so forth. But I think the halacha says that an average layman and a Kohen should not be doing this motion with the fingers unless you're blessing the people. It's reserved only for this whole spiritual movement. Sorry?
He used 1 hand. He didn't.
Yeah, okay, you're right. I don't know if it's actually a law. I don't know if he's violating the law. I don't know the parameters. It's an interesting, but it is stated that the Kohanim should not, and we should not just, salute each other like this, lightly. We're taking lightly a Jewish ritual, which is for blessing, and using it, in the street and in the market. That's inappropriate. But again, this is not a biblical law. It's not a rabbinic law. This is perhaps it's a rabbinic law. Not sure, but it's an element of care that we should treat our rituals with respect. That's all. But it's beautiful. It is a beautiful mitzvah that the Kohanim bless us.
Yes.
What else is there to say about Birkat Kohanim? Receiving the blessing, looking at them, going blind to both eyes the 3rd time. There is another part of the custom that you may not be aware of. If you're a good boy like I was, growing up, I grew up in Chutz La'aretz, so I didn't see the Kohanim bless every day. So I came to Israel. I think I was in grade 6. And I was curious, because every day in the Chazarat HaShatz, when the repetition of the Amidah, I saw that after the Kedusha, there's an exodus. All of a sudden, people get up out of their seats and they walk out of shul. Why is everybody leaving? So I didn't understand. And then, so I went with them one time, just because I was curious. I'm not a Kohen. And I saw that the Kohanim are washing their hands. The Kohen, before he blesses the people, he must wash his hands. Mm-hmm. He doesn't make a bracha, but he washes his hands. As a matter of fact, there's an ancient custom that, just like in the Chumash, we read that the Leviim were chosen to be the helpers of the Kohanim. Right? There was the actual worship was done by the Kohanim, but the Levites had a role. What are the 2 major roles of the Levites in the temple? Singing is one. Excellent. The Levites were the singers. What was the second? Guarding. Excellent. Those are the 2 major roles. Singing and instruments goes together, absolutely. And guarding. So there was watches, You're going to the army soon. You're going to do a lot of guard duty. What are they afraid of? What do we need guards around the temple?
People who are impure going in the temple.
Maybe, but how many people?
It's also out of respect.
Lots of gold.
Have you ever been to the Buckingham Palace?
No.
You can't go in. You can't go in.
I went there.
But what do they have outside?
Some guys with heads.
Big hats, right? The guards have these big hats, and they stand at attention, and they're not supposed to move, right? They try to make a joke. They only like change of the guards. You can go and see. It's a whole ritual. So this is a guard detail for something which is out of respect. It's a mark of respect of the palace. Similar, that's what the Levites were doing. Ariella, I don't think it was so much an issue of it. Their job is to stop people who are tameh. Maybe that was part of it.
No.
But mainly it was
People just
mainly.
kind of run up inside and they're not going to let them get inside.
Right. So it could happen once in a while, but they probably had some gates too. But the point is that having somebody important, you have a guard detail, which it's a sign of respect. It's like
And also,
when a foreign dignitary visits the country, they get off the plane. Who meets them? There's a row of soldiers with guns, sometimes with spears. Even today, and they're all with their shoes polished, right? And then it's a ceremonial, and then the head of state comes and he reviews. He walks past the soldiers and he nods or whatever, and it's a way we show respect. They're having guards. So the Levites have the role in the temple, two roles: the singers and the guarders and the watchmen. And so one of the roles of the Levites is to wash the hands of the Kohanim. We preserve this role of the Levites. Now, I was a child. I was telling you about my experience in grade 6. I came to Israel. I was curious at that 11-year-old, whatever it is, 12-year-old. And so I go to shul every day. I see that these people are leaving. So I realize, okay, they're the Kohanim. I go out and I see, they're washing their hands. So I say, great. I want to help. So I took the washing cup and I poured it over the Kohen's hands. Only later did I learn that not allowed. It's only the Levites which do that and assist the Kohanim wash their hands.
I always have a great heart.
What could I do? I didn't know. Only afterwards. So if there's no Levi, the Kohen washes his own hands. Maybe an Israelite can help him if there's no Levi. You could, but anyways, this is the custom. Sort of preserves the special status. Nowadays, there's really no ramification of being a Levi. If there was agriculture, if they're a farmer, the Levi receives a certain portion of, the maaser, but there's no real ramifications of being a Levi, except that you get more aliyot. You get called up to be number 2 after the Kohen. Also, kahuna, nowadays it's almost, there's no ramification, except this mitzvah to bless the people. But other than that, the tithes, the Kohanim are tameh, they can't eat any of those, the truma that they're supposed to get. And here and there, there's some, little differences between the Kohanim. They're not allowed to marry. A divorcee, that could be a ramification, very serious. So we keep the laws. Shalom Aleichem.
Raise of hands. Who's going tonight to Rabbi Saul Cohen's house for the shiur and dinner?
Shiur and dinner? Wow.
I can't. I would.
I want to go. You go?
Did you see the publicized yesterday morning?
And what's the book?
I publicized it yesterday morning.
I'm going.
I can't. I'm going to Rehovot, the yard site of my father-in-law.
I'm going.
It's not going.
Only two. Okay, thank you.
I think I will go to
More
his
pizza
house
for
Friday.
me.
More pizza. Oh, pizza?
Pizza, right?
You got shorty?
Eitan? Dinner.
Like pizza.
Huh?
I came to
Okay.
Okay. Anyways,
House, right? Yeah.
so back to the Kohanim, Leviim. What else can I tell you? We covered it, I think, pretty much. Yeah, Gabriel. Yeah.
Kohanim are not supposed to marry converts, right?
That's also true, yeah.
Is there a number of generations after a convert that the Kohen is allowed to marry someone, or is it
One.
forever? One.
But he could marry a convert's daughter. Or, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting to hear. Because
You have a girlfriend?
No,
The opposite way doesn't work. A daughter of a Kohen may marry a convert. There is an issue that it's not ideal. The Kohanim, there's an ancient tradition that the Kohanim decided that they're not marrying converts, but that's the law lechatchila. We've said it many times in the ideal situation. But b'di'evid, and there's a debate about what's considered b'di'evid, but usually what it means is if the couple met and they fell in love and they want to marry each other, the rabbi will see that it's already, he doesn't want to break up a relationship like that. And so you can get married if the daughter of a Kohen wants to marry a convert. It's okay. It's just the opposite where it's a Torah law. Torah law, a Kohen cannot marry a woman convert, but the daughters are, it's fine.
Yeah, it's because I had a discussion a while ago. I think the person I was talking to was just completely misunderstanding everything, because that's what I thought initially.
Okay.
But they will say, oh no, it's forever, and if you take a DNA test of every Kohanim today, none of them are pure, so we don't have Kohanim anymore.
Right. So let this be a lesson to us that we've learned it before, but we'll learn it over and over and again. Don't learn about Judaism from your friends and what they say, and 9 times out of 10 they'll be wrong. Even here in the yeshiva, Rav Dani Shecharton, the Rabbi here, says it every year, numerous times. He says, specifically in the realm of halacha, don't learn from your friends. That's what the rabbis are for. Your rabbi is authorized and is knowledgeable enough to know the different customs, the different circumstances, and to apply the halacha. And people say lots of stuff, and usually they're wrong, specifically about Judaism. So we're here to try to learn, as close to the authoritative interpretations as we can. So it shouldn't be surprising to you that this person was wrong, right?
Just one more comment. The blessing of the children with the imposing of the hand and everything.
Yeah.
That is a custom that B'nai Yisrael kept. Like my father did that to me.
Lovely.
His father did that to him.
Wow.
So it's like, because it's something that is done privately, it's not something that would endanger us.
Right.
So it was something that my entire family kept.
Lovely. Interesting. Thank you. Yes, Eitan.
What about if the Kohen is going from your father in the family?
Yes.
But if your mother's side not Jewish, you are Jewish if your father Kohen from the father's side?
It's an interesting thing. If your father is a Kohen and your mother is not Jewish,
so you're a Kohen but not Jewish.
So you're not Jewish. If you're not Jewish,
being Jewish, and then you can be
exactly. You got to start off with being Jewish. So even if your father's Kohen, if you convert, you will not be a Kohen, even though your father's a Kohen, because
you're not allowed to marry your mother.
Of course.
So you have a different status.
You're absolutely right. There are rules, a lot of rules about the Kohanim, and there's special holiness, and some of them, like a Kohen's not allowed to go to the cemetery. It's not allowed to get close to the dead, even today, even though they don't go to the Beit HaMikdash. It's one of the rules.
He won't be a Kohen at all.
So
he'll lose his.
So that rule of going to the cemetery, it doesn't make him lose his Kohuna status. But if a Kohen were to marry a non-Jew, or even a convert, or any woman that is prohibited to him, there's certain special laws for the Kohanim, it violates his Kohuna. I had in my community once a Kohen who married a divorcee, and I told him not to go up to bless the community. He was not happy. The other Kohanim, his friends, were not happy. But that's the law. Anyways, it's a complicated case. we let it be. But it worked itself out. They got divorced anyway. So. But so if a Kohen marries a non-Jew, then the children of that marriage, that union, it's not a marriage. Right? The children of that union are not valid Kohanim. Right? Even if she was a Jew, but she was forbidden to him, the children would not be Kohanim. Now the Kohen can reinstate himself as a Kohen himself if he does tshuva. But the children, if they're born of a forbidden union, they're just not Kohanim forever in any case. So no, that child, even if he converted, he would not be a Kohen. Okay?
Wow.
And his son after him also.
No, he'd be a fine Israelite, just not a Kohen. You lose the status of Kohen. Yeah.
I have a very good friend whose father was Kohen and his mother was also Jewish, but I think they were not allowed to marry. So what he did, he married with his mother in not on the other side of Judaism, the liberal.
Right. Another,
so
yeah.
he's not recognized as a Kohen because of that. But maybe because of nothing, but that's he's not a Kohen. But his father's a Kohen.
Right. Yeah, that's right. You can lose your status of Kuna if you violate the laws of Kuna. There's a penalty. It's a penalty that's written in the Torah. It's not from the sages. This is the rules of the Kahuna. Some of them are verses in the Torah that if you violate the rules of Kuna, you cease to be a Kohen.
But his father was a Kohen, but he didn't.
That's right.
Because
if he violated the rules, you can sit here if you like. There's a chair if you like. There's even two. Yeah.
What's about, maybe it's a custom, I don't know, when we have kuppah, the katan is allowed to give blessings at that special day. Is it a custom, or is it not a custom, where it comes from?
So there is this idea, as I said before, everybody can give blessings, right? All the Jewish people were given the power of blessing, like Abraham was given the power of blessing. Everybody can give blessings, and it's a nice thing to bless each other. What would you rather, curse each other? Chas v'shalom. So it's a good thing to bless each other. So there is an idea that you might have seen it at a Brit Milah. It's becoming more and more popular. It's not a law, but it's I don't know. So some customs sort of have fashion. They go in fashion, out of fashion. There's fads, sort of. Anyways, the custom is that it's more popular in the Sephardic world and the Kabbalistic world. The fellow who holds the baby for a Brit Milah, what's he called? Sandak. Sandak is many times translated Samach Nun Daled Kuf. Sometimes it's translated in English as, there's a movie called Hasandak.
Oh.
What movie was that? It's a very popular movie.
Hasandak sounds Kung Fu movie?
Not Kung Fu, no. Hasandak is the way they translate it to Hebrew, the movie, the famous movie called The Godfather. You ever heard of the movie The Godfather? With the mafia and all that? So there's a concept of The Godfather. They translate it to Sandak. Right. So it doesn't mean the same thing. But the fellow, it doesn't have to be the grandfather, but it's an honor that you hold the baby. When I was a sandak once in my life for my grandson, it's beautiful. I had to fly all the way across the world in order to get it because my daughter gave birth in Australia. Luckily, my son-in-law's parents didn't come. Because then the other grandfather might have been able to do that. So I got that one. So it's an honor. And there's this concept that if you do such a holy mitzvah, if you participate in the mitzvah, the sandak receives the power of blessing. So you'll see people coming up, after the brit is over, they come up to the special chair where the brit is done, where the circumcision is done, and they ask the sandak for a blessing. He puts his hands, he gives a blessing to each and every one. So whenever you do a very holy thing, your spiritual power increases. So also a chatan, he's doing a very big mitzvah, he's getting married. So maybe his spiritual power increases. And also they say on Yom, when a chatan gets married, and a kala, by the way, they're doing a very, very holy act. It's like Yom Kippur for them. All their sins get erased. They have a fresh start. And Yom Kippur, we know, is a very spiritual and holy day. So they have the power of blessing and the power of prayer as well. Many people give names of people that are sick to a chatan. Please pray to a kala. Please pray for my sister, for my mother, whatever. People gave, yeah.
The people came to me and said, please give me a blessing, also talking about sick people.
Yeah, that's it. What's going on here?
I'm not the Kohen.
Exactly. But there are other people that have the power of blessing. As I said, sometimes you can go to a rabbi who you think is a holy man and ask him to pray for you, to pray for your loved one who is sick or anything they need. And the idea is somebody who's on a higher spiritual level might have a more direct line or less interference on the line of and his prayers that will be accepted better than my prayers. Who am I? But the holy rabbi, he has better prayers. Principle we all know is that we, each and every one of us, pray directly to Hashem. We all have the power of prayer, just like we all have the power of blessing. But it could be that some people have a higher level of power of blessing if they're very spiritual. And so that's why we have other events throughout the year where people might be asking for blessings. The Chatan might be giving blessings as well. We see that more and more. This is a new fashion. People come over to the Chatan in the middle of the dance floor. Everybody's dancing, and they say, give me a blessing. Chatan does it, so he gives him a blessing. And now it becomes, it's actually, you have to sort of grow into the task. How do you give someone a blessing? So you have to think what they need. I bless you, studies should go well, and that you should get a new car. Because you see, he's got a very old car. Or he needs a shidduch. So say, I bless you, you should find a shidduch. So every groom turns into a Hasidic rabbi who's giving blessings. And this is a relatively recent that it's become more and more popular. But it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's good to give everybody blessings. And the Chatan, he's doing a very big mitzvah. So maybe he does have it. No, it's not. Maybe it started with Sephardim, but again, I think that a lot of Sephardim are into Kabbalah more so than Ashkenazim, although there's Ashkenazi Kabbalists as well. But it's an interesting question.
So how should we?
Technically, no. Yes, it could be, but it's quite common that it's quite uncommon. But technically, I don't think there's a problem. Anybody could hold. Yeah.
So how should do the blessing?
So you can make it up yourself. You can recite the Kohanim blessing, the 3 verses. You could say, I think we mentioned a couple months ago, the greatest rabbi of our generation died, and we said he was so busy learning Torah day and night, he made up his own form of blessing. Buha, right. Instead of saying bracha, v'hatzlacha, in 2 words, which was beracha, v'hatzlacha. Instead of 7 syllables, he said buha, 2 syllables. Saves them time. But, bracha v'hatzlacha is a nice blessing. My wife's father passed away today, 13 years ago. So we're going to the cemetery, and so yesterday she told her friend she's going to, it's called Yortzeit. It's the day that your relative died. And she gave her a blessing. She said to her, Chaim Arukim. You should have a long life. That's what you say on a birthday. What do you say on a death day? So the dead person, you say, we read passages of Tehillim and we pray for their soul. But to the person who's So apparently there's this custom that somebody who has a yortzeit for a relative of theirs, you give them a blessing. You should have long life. Your relative died. As opposed to them, it's a blessing for long life. Bracha v'hatzlacha. There's on the diamond industry. In Antwerp, and now in New York. A lot of religious Jews are in the diamond industry.
I want to be in the
Well, go for it. What's the standard blessing? When you sign a deal, there, a handshake, there's no contracts. It's all your word is worth diamonds. And how do you know the deal is signed? When you say to the other one, Mazal uvracha. Mazal uvracha. Mazal uvracha. That's just a convention. It's just whatever, each community makes up its own forms of blessing. So you decide which one you want to use. If someone asks you for a blessing, you say to him, bracha v'atzlacha. You could say the Birkat Kohanim words from the Torah. You could just say, I bless you. What do you say when someone sneezes? Livriyut, bless you. In English, you say bless you. Okay, that's a blessing. In Hebrew, it says in the Talmud that if someone sneezes, you should say asuta. What does asuta mean? It's Aramaic. There's a hospital in one of the biggest hospitals in Israel. The name of the hospital is Asuta.
It means health, good health?
It means health, exactly.
Well, because
it means health.
In Dutch, we say Gesundheit.
Gesundheit, of course. Gesundheit in Yiddish, Gesundheit.
Yeah,
you should be well. What does it mean? You should be well? What does it mean?
Yeah,
Be well. Gesundheit. Asuta is actually more healing than just well. Well meaning you should be healed. So anyways, it says that you shouldn't, when you're studying Torah, when someone sneezes, you shouldn't stop and say Asuta. But nowadays our sessions are much more informal. We mentioned a number of times that life used to be much more structured, and nowadays, if you're willing to say, how are you? How are you feeling today? So you could say, God bless you. If someone sneezes, you could say that, no problem. Even if you're in the middle of learning. It says in the Talmud that if you're in a class, Shiur Torah, and you need to go to the bathroom, you shouldn't go. Because how can you leave in the middle of the class?
It's a sort of hold it in.
It's a sort to hold it in. You're absolutely right. It's a contradiction. On one hand, you're not supposed to hold it in. Talmud feels that could be dangerous.
So that makes
and it could be. The truth is, we know nowadays that you can get a urinary tract infection, or you could, but it's not good for your bladder to stretch it too much. But you got to show respect for the rabbi. What are you going to leave in the middle of the class? Get up in the middle of the class, right? You remember back maybe from grade school. If you wanted to leave the class, you had to raise your hand, ask permission, right? So we come in late. We come in the middle of the class, we leave in the middle of the class, we get up to drink, we eat in the middle of the class. It's okay. We're informal. I don't stand on formalities. Just come. But I really want you to come on time. If we're on the topic, I encourage you. I encourage you to. What did we say yesterday? I was speaking to somebody about their experience in the classroom, and they said that the teacher taught them very well, and they, without arguing, without yelling, when the class started, teacher came, he locked the door. Whoever came late had to wait outside. 5 minutes later, he opened the door once. Whoever was late could come in. He locked the door again. That's it, till the end of the class. And they learned that they're supposed to be on time. Maybe the 5 minutes late is because sometimes it happens. You're in the bathroom, whatever. You get held up. we don't have to go crazy but very simple. We should be doing that here too. But I can't stop you from learning Torah. Someone comes in an hour late. What am I? There's still half an hour left. If they could learn Torah, because of me, they're not going to learn Torah. Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. I don't know. Maybe I should be more careful about the honor. Not my honor. The honor of Torah. You're here to do something serious. Come late for a work meeting, you lose the deal. That's it. Right? You show disrespect, they won't do business with you again. And then you learn to respect your neighbor, respect the other business partner. So we should be more careful about the Torah study. What you're doing right now is the most important thing in the world.
I remember when I came from school when I was a little boy, and we had dinner, and we used to have a warm dinner, and I came too late, and the offer we had, it was cold, and I was complaining, and my mother said, you want to have home eating? You need to be in time.
Okay.
I don't
Right.
work again.
You learned your lesson. Right. So obviously there's different methods of education, and there's tough love, and there's every circumstance is a little bit different, and every child is a little bit different, and every student is a little bit different. But the principle is, it's a sign of respect. How did we get onto this topic? What were we talking about? Why did we talk about? Going to the bathroom. Why did we talk about going to the bathroom? Right. So leaving in the middle or saying God bless you in the middle of the lesson, you're going to speak up? I encourage your questions here. I want you to talk. But in a formal lesson, in a formal lecture, if you go to the opera, have you ever been to the opera? Been to the symphony? You were once.
No, opera and symphony.
If you cough, they'll throw you out. You're not allowed to, you've been. Oh, sure. And then when there's a break in between, the first part of the piece and the second part of the symphony, there's like a little 30-second break. Everybody's coughing because they were holding it in. They know that in the middle of the orchestra, the piece, you can't even make a beeps. Right? So that's what it was like in the Shiur Torah, in the Talmud, what they were saying. The rabbi's teaching. Someone sneezes. You can't control it. But don't make it worse by speaking out and saying, God bless you. But we live in a less formal setting and or not. You don't have to say, God bless you. Everybody around will know why you're not responding. It's because it's the middle of the class. And, the only reason we wait for, people raising hands here is because we can't have everybody talking at once. But I encourage talking and questions. It's great. We haven't even started to open up the book yet. We've been talking for an hour and a half. The questions, but it's fine. It's good. It's all, these are the fundamentals of Judaism. So the questions are the best. It's not quite what I prepared. That's okay. It's fine. Gabriel.
I am a classically trained musician, and I do have to say, the whole staying quiet thing during concerts, it is a rule nowadays, but it's not historically accurate at all. Like if you went to a Beethoven concert back in the day when he was conducting, it would almost look like a metal show. Like people would be screaming and singing along, and like it was because it was a social event. And basically, if you look in terms of style and music theory, classical music, especially from the Romantic period, is basically metal without electricity. So like the concerts were like really
loud,
and the crowd was interactive and everything.
I love those kettle drums.
Yeah. If you go to if you went to a Shakespearean presentation back when Shakespeare was
also
alive, same thing. People would be and cheering and
right,
yelling
right.
At the actors.
Interesting. What's your instrument?
Guitar. Mostly guitar, I play some other stuff.
Like classical guitar?
Yeah,
Like
I started with
flamenco? Like
No, classical. Like flamenco it comes from the Arabs.
Okay.
My training, my initial training was classical guitar, and then I moved to electric again.
And you like playing metal?
Yes.
Okay.
The language of electric guitar is actually the same, very similar to the cello and the violin.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Do you have one here?
No.
Shame.
I wish. I regret it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You know one of the biggest influences of metal guitarists. It was Paganini. Yeah, like if you look for guitar players playing Paganini, like thousands of videos.
Yafe. Okay, good. All right, let's talk a little bit about the. Do you need room to write notes? I can make room for you.
I made it on my notes app.
Okay, perfect. Let's finish up the laws of the 9 days, because today's already Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday, and Thursday night is Rosh Chodesh. So we were on page 173. Everybody want to get the books for everybody? There might be a few more. We were going to talk about laundry. We did talk a little bit about laundry, that we avoid it if possible. Take a look on page 174 at the top. Again, we're learning a Pnei Halacha, the book called Zmanim, chapter 8, the customs of the 3 weeks. We're up to page 174 at the top. It says, if one's shirt becomes stained in a way that makes him look unpresentable, and he has no other shirt to wear, he may clean the stain with water for the sake of human dignity. In Hebrew, kevod habriot, human dignity. If the stain does not come off with water alone, he may use soap. So if you don't have any other shirt, then you can basically do the laundry. As you know, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't do a festive going down to the river with the neighborhood. But by all means, you can spot clean. It's called. Next page, 175. Children's clothing.
Prohibited means allowed, not allowed.
Not allowed. Prohibited is not allowed. Prohibited is not allowed. Yes. Page 175. Children's clothing. Many people are lenient in time of need. If you have to change their clothes a lot, they get dirty every day. They go playing in the dirt. There's no joy in laundering, and he says here, Ashkenazi may rely on this leniency lechatchila until Shabbat Chazon. This year it means the entire 9 days.
But this time it's not required, because they say
Exactly.
So you can do laundry, maybe?
Yeah, if you're Sephardi, yes. Ashkenazim, we go from Rosh Chodesh.
No laundry.
No laundry. Fernandez. Sephardim can't do laundry.
This
Yeah, this year, yes. Also, in a hospital or in a hotel, they have to change their sheets for the new guests for hygiene, and.
Also, it's very hot now. You sweat easily.
Right, that's right. We already mentioned that the clothing, underwear and.
Maybe it's good to be stinky during these days. It's like
no.
You can shower.
Oi.
On the 9th of Av, no, right? No showering on the 9th.
Correct. No showering on the 9th of Av. We're going to get to bathing right now. But before that, look on the top of page 174 once again. There was that Hebrew phrase, kevod, top of 174, line number 3. Kevod abriot, human dignity. Many times during the 9 days, I believe that you'll find people are being too lenient about kevod habriot. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that. You're not really supposed to bathe. And if you don't bathe, you start to stink. Now forget about the fact of, your own sense of dignity. What about the other guy? You get onto a bus or you go into a closed room in a yeshiva. If nobody's showered, it's the Middle East. It stinks. That's not kavod habriot.
Right before Shabbat.
That's not kavod habriot. you have to always balance out these rules of the morning, but for Kavod Abriot, there's leniency. So take a look at bathing now. Go to page 176. The phrase human dignity means you have to show respect to each other, to basic hygiene and comfort of each other. So it says here on the top of page 176, even though the sages prohibited bathing on Tisha B'Av only, Rishonim were stringent and would refrain from bathing on the days preceding Tisha B'Av as well. Marani, Iberian Jews were stringent as well, and they would refrain from washing in hot water during the week of Tisha B'Av. Ashkenazi custom was to refrain from bathing completely during the 9 days, even in cold water. They would only rinse in cold water in preparation
Because
for
they were
Shabbat
a
Chazon.
cold place, or were they just
It
stinking?
makes sense because, like, if you're in Iberia, it's hot. You can use cold water. If you're in Russia, you don't sweat. So
Absolutely,
you just imitate the Europeans, and you don't bathe at all.
exactly. In the Middle Ages, people, it was considered unhealthy to bathe.
Oh, Europeans are backwards.
In France, you put on perfume. You didn't bathe. That's right. It's not good to bathe. In some cultures, this is the way it was. So that's why the next line in page 176 in the second paragraph, it says, today, however, our hygiene and bathing habits have changed completely. In the past, people did not have running water in their homes. Bathing was thus considered a special occasion and a rare pleasure. Because of this, people barely suffered when they refrained from bathing. Nowadays, though, when people shower regularly, this has become a routine practice. Many people shower daily. Hopefully, you all here, those guys in the dorm especially, and living in close quarters, yes, the common custom is, in our society, in Western society today, to shower daily with soap. And if you don't, people that get used to that, as you should, as a common decency standard for living in close quarters with others, you would suffer if you were to go even a single day without showering. Some people even have difficulty falling asleep if they don't shower. Therefore, the bottom line, Rav Melamed paskins as follows. He says, one who feels pain when he refrains from washing himself may shower in lukewarm water, so that he does not take pleasure in his bathing, right? Hot water is going to give you pleasure. Cold water, it's pain. You're not supposed to give yourself pain. Depends. If it's more comfortable, fine. Use cold water, that's better. But you're even allowed to use lukewarm water because it's not for pleasure. The sole purpose of this activity should be his own cleanliness. One may even use soap in order to remove a bad odor from one's body. If one cannot tolerate having unclean hair, he may wash his hair with shampoo. These rules apply according to the Ashkenazi custom throughout the 9 days. We're not talking about staying in the shower for 10 minutes under the hot water. That's pleasure. That's bathing for pleasure. Many people do that. Here in Israel, especially if you're in the dorm, you don't have a hot water whenever you want. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And if there is, anyways, this is not the time. The 9 days, you shower quickly for hygiene every day if necessary, if that's the common custom, which it is. It's a good idea.
To Shabbat, before Shabbat, take a shower for the sake of Shabbat.
We'll talk about Shabbat in a second. Next, page 177, the first paragraph says, one second, I just want to finish it. Even if having foul body odor due to lack of showering does not bother a particular person, he should nonetheless shower during the 9 days in the week of Tisha B'Av to remove this foul odor because of the great value of, tell it to me in Hebrew, he says here, human dignity, kevod abriot. You have to be careful of the other person's sensitivity to the bad smell. Moreover, many people are sensitive to bad smells nowadays. If one fails to wash himself, cause a desecration of God's name. If you walk into a secular lawyer's office everybody smells nice, and you sit there comfortably waiting for your turn, and then you walk into a synagogue. The place stinks. That's a chilul Hashem. That's a desecration of God's name. You want to associate God's worship with foul or odors, with bad smells? So we have to be more sensitive. In the day, everybody smelled. Or it wasn't the standard. The standards change. But if the standard is in most places that, someone comes in with a foul odor, they're like, everybody looks at them funny. So if the person is wearing a kippah and tzitzit, and even though he's trying to be a holy man, he's trying to he's mourning for the temple, which is a good thing. You have to be aware not to make a bad impression on others. Other people are more sensitive to smell than they used to be. Now, I'll just finish it and then I'll take all the questions. Regarding Shabbat, that's what he says here at the bottom, page 177, the next paragraph. Everyone showers in preparation for Shabbat Chazon. The only distinction is that Ashkenazim still use only lukewarm water, while Sephardim permit using hot water because they don't start there. Not on Shabbat. Erev Shabbat. Erev Shabbat. Getting ready for Shabbat. On Shabbat, the custom is we don't shower usually ever. But that's another topic for another day. But another topic, we'll talk about the laws of Shabbat. But preparing for Shabbat, there is a Hasidic custom that he doesn't mention here, that you can be lenient, even Ashkenazim can be lenient, because you're doing it for the sake of the honor of Shabbat, even to use hot water. And you do have a little bit of enjoyment, because it's sort of part of getting ready for Shabbat. There is room to be lenient, if you're a Chassid especially, but Rav Melamed says only use lukewarm water. Don't enjoy your shower, but you have to shower in preparation of Shabbat. Okay? The other part of bathing is, what's considered bathing for pleasure? Swimming. Going to the pool, going to the ocean to swim. By definition, you're not doing that for hygiene usually. Usually you shower after you go to the pool to get off the chlorine. You go after the ocean to get off the salt, right? So you're not doing that for hygiene. Why are you going into the ocean? Why are you going into the swimming pool? For pleasure. You don't do that for the 9 days. In my yeshuv, we have a pool. We have separate hours for men, separate hours for women. There's also secular Jews, so there's mixed hours. There's even something called family hours, which is a little bit in between. Whatever there is, for the men's hours and the women's hours during the 9 days, almost empty. Sephardim are allowed to, but I guess there's not as many Sephardim as there are Ashkenazim. You notice the difference. Now, personally, I believe that when I was used to swim regularly for exercise. I'm not doing it for pleasure. I'm doing it for exercise. I go in, I do the laps, and I get out. It's not like I jump off, and have fun with my kids. That's another time. If you're just going in to do laps, it's exercise. It doesn't matter whether it's dry exercise or wet exercise. The point is, bathing for pleasure is prohibited, and also swimming might be considered to be a dangerous activity. We talked about that the other day. We're talking even about the 3 weeks. It can be, so you have to be more careful about dangerous things. But now I'll take your questions, and
So,
tomorrow we'll finish up.
swimming is important, they can technically, from the week of, they can't do it from the week of.
In general, Ashkenazim are Machon for the entire 9 days. Sephardim only the week of. This year there is no week of, according to most Sephardi poskim. 1 day, which is Tisha B'Av itself.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Renat.
We are in Israel in the high summer. So
Also has an impact on not showering, right?
Take a cold shower for me, it's a pleasure.
But it's okay. That's all right. That's okay.
It's fine.
If you're doing it for hygiene, it's fine. Bathing for pleasure is not okay. So if you're not allowed to swim,
go to the
Yeah,
jacuzzi.
And you're, but
I need
your
to take
pleasure
a shower.
bathing is sitting under the shower.
If I
You
take
shouldn't
a
do that
shower-
either. Do it short. Do it
If-
short.
Yeah, if I take a shower, if like say that I need to take a cold shower, that will not be like so
Enjoyable.
For me, it's a composite. So
You don't have to take a hot shower. But you do the basic minimum necessary for hygiene, and that's
You can use
and,
soap.
yeah.
Also, soap.
and soap, shampoo, yeah. Gavin.
What about immersion? Liquid.
So we just skipped that at the bottom of page 177. It says those who are accustomed to immersing in a mikveh every day may do so until the day before Tisha B'Av, though they must make an effort to use lukewarm water rather than hot water. Again, there are some Hasidim that are a little bit more lenient about this because you're doing it for a mitzvah, you're doing it as a Jewish ritual. It's not for pleasure. Although some people, the mikvahs are really nicely heated. You go in there, you say, So it depends on the mikveh you go to. The point is not to bathe for pleasure. You bathe for ritual reasons is kosher. Yeah.
Can you immerse in, as you said, not to swim for pleasure? Can you immerse in the ocean? Can you immerse in the river?
If you're doing it for the ritual purpose, then yes. Yeah. Micha, again.
I was saying there's an interesting story in the Talmud, right, about Rav Hillel. That I don't know if he was taking lots of showers, of many time in the showers, and the students was like, "Hey, why are you taking so much shower?" And he was like, "Yeah, you see the statues of the Romans, how much care they take to polish it. How much care I have to take since I am an image of Hashem."
Beautiful.
So that also feel like
Absolutely, yeah. It's important to take care of your body. Your body was God-given and in the image of God, and health and hygiene is a Jewish value, no question about it. So, of course, we value the temple and our mourning and our commemoration of the temple, but we have to keep it in the right balance. Okay? Another question?
Okay, so yesterday you told me I'm allowed to eat meat from Rosh Hashanah to Shabbat Chazon.
Correct.
Even though in here it says I'm not allowed to.
This year, I'm only talking about this year, because Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat. In a regular year,
There's still Rosh Chodesh to Shabbat. There's a period.
But we don't keep it on Shabbat because we do it the next week, because Sunday is the new week already.
I know there's no week of to Shabbat. That's what I'm talking about.
So what are you talking about?
Rosh Chodesh Av.
Rosh Chodesh itself, there is a debate.
No,
how do we celebrate Rosh Chodesh?
Yeah.
We talked about in general. Celebration of Rosh Chodesh is nowadays primarily a custom, other than saying the Ya'alev Yavo and the Hallel. It's pretty much a regular day. We have a Musaf. The prayers are a little different, but it's a regular day for all intents. On Rosh Chodesh, yes, always we say that. So there's certain rituals we do on Rosh Chodesh, but it's not a major festival. One second. Some people say, well, we're missing out. In ancient times, it was a more central day. There was a family gathering, and so some people have an extra special meal on Rosh Chodesh to mark Rosh Chodesh. It's not obligatory. You don't have to.
Right?
No, Friday.
Friday, okay. Thursday night. Okay.
The question is, Rosh Chodesh Av, on the one hand, it's Rosh Chodesh. So everything I just said, make it a little more festive. We're going to say the Hallel, we're going to say the Musaf, so it's a festive day, and maybe we want to have a family meal, we want to make something a little more special. On the other hand, this Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of Av. Av is the period of mourning. So the day of Rosh Chodesh itself has a dual character. On the one hand, it's Rosh Chodesh. On the other hand, it's day 1 out of 9 days of mourning. And so how to put that into practice is debated.
Rosh Chodesh, you imagine it as this month. Right now, it's less joy, but in the future, it's going to be the best month in the entire year.
The future will be the future. Right now,
that's why
some rabbis say, if your custom is to have meat and wine every Rosh Chodesh because you decided that this is what I want to make a big deal of Rosh Chodesh. You're allowed to have on Rosh Chodesh. Most rabbis say those customs of making Rosh Chodesh more significant may be nice, but they can't push aside the mourning practices of the 9 days. The 9 days start on Rosh Chodesh. And so even though it's a little bit festive, it's actually a little bit sad. And therefore the restrictions, if you're Ashkenazi, they start from Rosh Chodesh. You can't have meat on Rosh Chodesh day and on the eve of Rosh Chodesh. But if you're Sephardi, you're not starting those restrictions yet until the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. That's what you're reading in your book.
There's also some
in between Rosh Chodesh.
who do
There
it
are,
after,
correct.
Rosh Chodesh Av, they eat meat. Rosh Chodesh Av, and then after the 8 days, they don't eat.
Correct.
Because
That's what I
Shabbat.
said. That's what I started with. That's because it's Rosh Chodesh. They say that overrides the customs of mourning. Yeah, but most
So
most
they're
poskim.
on the what?
No, you have to ask your rabbi. Whatever,
I have to
ask your
father.
posek. Whatever. Do we have meat on Rosh Chodesh because it's Rosh Chodesh? And most rabbis say we don't have meat on Rosh Chodesh Av, even if you would have it every other Rosh Chodesh, not this Rosh Chodesh. Most people don't have meat on Rosh Chodesh. They say the Hallel and they say the Musaf, and then they eat whatever they do. They eat whatever they eat, but they don't have a special meal for Rosh Chodesh. So, Dafka on this one, you're going to have a special meat meal. It's like every other Rosh Chodesh. You eat whatever you happen to eat, and you don't have any special meal for it. And now that the 9 days are starting, you should refrain from having meat. If you're refraining 8 days, you should refrain 9 days. But there are some people that paskin differently.
If you special pious people, they restrain, even if they're Sephardic, they restrain from it the whole 9 days.
Correct.
But it's
Correct.
permitted to
Correct.
eat the whole
The question is, Rosh Chodesh, is that an exception to the rest of the 9 days or not? Most poskim say it's not an exception. But there are some rabbis, which maybe Rav Ovadia Yosef, I don't know what you're referring to. I haven't read that book. But I don't know if he treats Rosh Chodesh as such an exception or not. We'll have to see.
No, I read it. It's just what
So-
it said, it clarifies everything like what I thought.
Okay?
Thank you.
Perfect. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. One more last day before the 9 days begin.
We have a break.
After Tisha B'Av, there's a break. After Tisha B'Av for 3 weeks. Yeah. There's the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av.